The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
Welcome from the General Assembly and the City of Richmond. I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Comcast. With about 31 days left in this 2013 short session, we welcome the contingent from Henrico County, Delegate Riley Ingram. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Woody. Nice to see you.
Delegate John O'Bannon, how are you?
Good morning, Woody.
Delegate Jimmy Massie, good to see you again, sir.
Good to see you as well, Woody. Thank you for having us.
Well, you've gotten off to a very fast start, and I know there are a lot of issues for your constituents in Henrico County, economic development and transportation being two very important ones. So give us the lay of the land.
Yeah, thank you, Woody. Economic development and job growth, transportation, and K-12, I think, are going to be the three big issues. We also have the Medicaid and Medicare issues to talk about. John is substantially more qualified to talk about those. But on the economic development, I mean, you know, we're still hurting. I still have a lot of constituents in Henrico County that are hurting out there. It's a very difficult job market. It's still a difficult economy. So we have been very focused, and we're very fortunate in Virginia, Woody. I mean, Virginia is the best managed state, the best state to do business in, fourth best state to raise a child in, and we have the finest system of public higher education in the country. And you know, in Henrico County, I would tell you Henrico County is one of the 34 AAA rated counties in the country out of 3,000. So we got a lot to be thankful for in Virginia, and for that performance, that economic performance, you know, we charge Virginians the 49th lowest price in the country. State and local taxation as a percentage of personal income, 49th lowest. Our unemployment rate is about 5.5% when the national rate is, you know, 7.8, 7.9, something like that. So we have a lot to be thankful for, but we're not going to take, and we've done a lot on economic development the last couple of years, but we're not going to take our eye off of that. We understand that that's really what's on our constituents' mind, and we're going to continue to make Virginia the best place to do business in. But what we're focused on, the governor is more focused on this year, is really K-12 and transportation. I'll talk a little bit about transportation, and we can pass the ball off. I think there is a consensus in the executive mansion and in the legislature, both the House and the Senate, that Virginia faces a significant transportation challenge. If we're going to remain the best state to do business in and have a world-class economy, we've got to have a world-class transportation system. And there are some challenges on that front. So that consensus exists. What I would tell you is the consensus that doesn't exist is how to address that. I applaud the governor and others in the legislature for putting forward a plan, and we're going to have a robust debate on that plan, and you know, maybe we come to a consensus. You know, it's been a pretty short time frame. You know, I saw the plan, and I think Riley and John, we saw the plan Tuesday before the session started on Wednesday. You know, the bill wasn't dropped until last Friday in the House, at least. That's you know, to reach a consensus. You know, have a broad and deep discussion about an issue as important as transportation, and reach a consensus on that time frame is pretty short. But we're going to take a stab at it and see if we can come to a consensus in this short session.
Great. So. And Delegate O'Bannon, a lot of other challenges, not the least of which your expertise as a doctor lends itself to dealing with healthcare issues. And of course, Medicaid expansion is one of those issues that's facing the Commonwealth.
Well, you're exactly right, Woody. We're now just beginning to see the end game on the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, so we've got a lot of those laws and obligations and some of those taxes kicking in at the same time, where we've got two pieces that we've got to weigh in on. One is what's called the insurance exchange. That is not unlike what happened up in Massachusetts, where they have a plan to have folks be able to go to this exchange and purchase health insurance with a subsidy. It only runs by new money to help people. So we have looked at that. About 15 or 16 states have decided they want to run that themselves. Probably an equal number or more states have said, well, we're not really interested in paying for that and running it. It's a federal responsibility. It's part of the health care plan. So I think Virginia is going to start by letting the federal government take that lead, and then we'll see, with possibly an opportunity to take it over. Medicaid expansion is a tougher one because Medicaid expansion is linked at the hip to the Medicaid program, which is already the fastest growing part of state government. The greatest threat to states, particularly Virginia, is the cost of Medicaid, the way the program is today. And so the opportunity is to expand it. And what our governor said, and which many of us, I think, feel, is that it's a great opportunity, but it's a huge issue or a question of how much we're obligating ourselves to down the road. So what we've undertaken is sort of a dialogue with CMS, the Medicare, Medicaid people, to see if we can get some flexibility in how we spend our dollars. You know, you hear about the cost curve in healthcare. Why is healthcare so much more expensive? The idea would be if we can get some flexibility to try to bend that cost curve, you know, reform it first and then see about expanding it, is kind of where I think most of us would like to go. You know, Henrico is an interesting county because we actually take care of our own roads. Henrico does $8,000 per lane mile per year, in contrast to a Chesterfield or a Hanover. And so we're in a really interesting position to participate in this dialogue on transportation. Virginia has the third largest DOT in the country.
Department of Transportation.
People don't realize that Virginia, the way Virginia has done it for many, many years, is the state takes care of all the roads, except for Henrico and Arlington County. So I look forward to that dialogue. I think Jimmy's right. When you drive down 64 on a weekend, you realize we got a problem. And so we do have things we need to work on, but the question is whether we can really get something that's comprehensive enough to do a good job and simple enough for people to understand. So we'll be working on that.
And Delegate Ingram, you're continuing your efforts to ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse. I know you have some legislation dealing with temporary assistance for needy families, which grew out of a story you heard out of New Hampshire, I believe.
Well, let me tell you, Woody, what happened, this was the latter part of July, the first week in August of this year. I received a telephone call. It was early in the morning. It was like 9:30, and a gentleman from Prince George County, he said, Riley, he said, it just came on the news, on Fox News, where this lady, the employer fired her because she didn't sell cigarettes and beer to someone on, he called it tariff funds. He said it's welfare. I said, temporary assistance, needy family. He said, that's it. I said, it's TANF funds. He said, that's it. And he said there was no restrictions on it. They could take this money and buy anything they want to buy with it. So I started checking on it and found out that there are no restrictions. They get a debit card and they can use it anywhere they want to, and the money is put on the card, Woody, and then they use it at use them at ABC stores, buying alcohol, buying beer, alcohol, cigarettes, all of these things. That's not what the temporary assistance needy families is for. It's for temporary assistance to help them, and it's for buying baby diapers. It's not for mine and your tax dollars going to something else. So the bill, I feel sure the bill will pass, but we had to take the enforcement clause out for right now. The bill will go in, but some of the people in social services are saying it's going to cost $3 million. I'm checking into that now to implement this plan so that it's on the card that they can't use it for that. I don't know exactly how it's going to work because that's kind of throwing a monkey wrench into it. But people that I've talked to, they definitely don't want abuse. I mean, we want to help anybody. That's part of our job, is to help the ones that cannot help themselves, but not to buy alcohol and use it at the girly shows and lap dances and all that type thing, which they've been used for that also.
Now, as I understand it, there's a prohibition against the use of those funds for the kinds of things you have enunciated, for food stamps, for example, and I think there's a federal statute that also prohibits it, but it won't be effective until 2014.
But yes. President has signed and it was given to states until until 2014 to implement to limit these things that can be done. So we have to do it, or we're going to lose millions and millions of dollars in welfare benefits.
Now, you were also relating a story earlier about check cashing and still the problems with identification there.
Woody, this makes the 4th year that I have tried to get this little, I've watered it down now until it's only a $200 fine. All I want is some type of identification. I wanted photo identification, and they didn't want photos, so I struck that out. Just any form of identification. Woody, it happens all the time. All the time, and it's more often, but the people are too embarrassed to come forward. This lady, this was back in November, and somebody came by our house and they wanted to do some repair work. This was just this past November, but it happens all the time. And the man was going to clean her gutters out and do some repair work to the shed in the backyard, and he said he needed an advance. So she wrote him a check. She wrote him a check for $200. So she was telling her son about it, that she had somebody who's going to clean the gutters out. And she said, I gave him $200. He said, Mama, you did not. She said, yes, I did. Said, well, call down and stop payment. You got to stop payment on the check. Well, the check had already cleared because he went to a check cashing place and they get 5%. It's not just that. The people that are here that are undocumented, I use the word illegal, and I got in trouble for that. So the proper political term is undocumented. And they work, and they get a check for $800. They don't want to go to the bank. They don't have a bank account, so they go to the check cashing place. They cash his check. Check cashing place gets 5%, so they get $40 for cashing his check. And so it's no ID required. Zero. No ID required. And all my bill says is that some form of ID. If you go to the bank, you have to have ID, or they give you a thumbprint or something before they cash a check. It's so narrowly drawn, it's strictly for check cashing establishments. That's all. And can't seem to get it through, but I'm going to try again this year.
Well, persistence has its virtues, no question about it. Delegate Massie, you were talking about how well Henrico County is run and how highly regarded its educational system is. Talk to us about the package of bills that passed the Education Committee yesterday that the governor had put forth, number one. And number two, talk to us about the change in leadership at the county level. You have a new county executive, I believe.
Yeah, we're really blessed, Woody, out in Henrico. I mean, out of some 3,000 counties in the country, only 34 of them are AAA rated. Henrico is one of those AAA rated counties, and Henrico is a very, very well-run operation. And we owe a lot of that. Virgil Hazlett, who is a recently retired county manager, I think he's been there 21 years. And then, John's wife, Pat O'Bannon, has been on our Board of Supervisors. We have our Board of Supervisors that mostly been in place for 20-some years. So we have a very well-run county. I think John Vitolkas, who is going to be the new county manager, is long steep. He was the chief financial officer of the county. John will, I think, carry on Virgil's legacy in a great way. But I tell you, the county's challenged, just like the state's challenged. The county revenues are mainly dependent on real estate taxes and then contributions from the state of Virginia. And as we all know, when we open up our real estate tax assessments for our homes in Henrico County, the values of our homes have been going down and commercial real estate prices have been going down. So, the county is, their revenues are down from, I think, $920-some million a year to about $820-some million a year over the last 4 or 5 years. And so, to date, I haven't had a lot of people, they've been able to deal with that without, laying off people and without a big reduction in county services. But they're expecting about another $20 million shortfall this coming year. So, it's tough. And if Henrico County, you think how well run Henrico County is, if you think it's that tough out in Henrico County, around the state, it's even tougher. So, but I think John will do. We're very excited with working with John and the board, and we'll get through this together. And we have a lot to be thankful for in Henrico County. On the education plan, again, there's nothing, Woody, more important than educating our children. I mean, Whitney Houston used to sing the song, "The Children Are Our Future," and that really is the case. And I applaud Governor McDonald. I think he's done a tremendous amount for education over his entire over his entire administration. We are focused on, it's the year of the teacher this year.
Right.
He's got a long laundry list of bills, too long really to go over bill by bill. But I would say some of the highlights of it are, teachers I don't think have had a raise in 4 years, so we're going to give them a 2% raise. It's going to cost us, state about $58 million in partnership with the localities. And then we're going to do some reforms as well. I think one of the biggest reforms we're going to do is with the continuing contracts. What teachers have. We're going to extend. There's a 3-year period now when you have to decide. When they go into the continuing contract, we're going to extend that to 5. And I think that's the right thing to do. So I think that, again, he has a long laundry list of ideas in K-12, and I really applaud him for it. I think he's going to see a tremendous amount of support in the House on that entire list. And again, if we don't do a great job by the children, Virginia is the 4th best state to raise a child in. We have wonderful public schools in Henrico County, but you don't stay in that high position without working hard at it. And I think the governor's agenda will even do more for education in the state of Virginia.
Doug O'Bannon, back to the Medicaid expansion issue. There are a number of proposals floating around, but one would only commit the state up to 3 years because of some of the economic consequences that you suggested. After that 3-year period, the state could decide to pull back. I take it. Have you had an opportunity to examine that in any detail?
We're looking at all of the proposals that have been offered. What's interesting about this is the federal government would actually pick up with what's called the match, all of that money for the first 2 or 3 years, but then it incrementally comes down. And part of our challenge, and you know this well, is Washington's finances are not in such good shape. And beyond that, Virginia has a unique relationship with Washington because we have a huge military presence, and we have a huge defense contractor presence and Homeland Security. So many of the contractors on this, Department of Homeland Security only got created in 2011 and 2001. So our budget is so linked at the hip to the military and defense spending that for us to make a big commitment, and the numbers are kind of moving too, so we certainly have an obligation to look at that, but I think we have to do, we have always been frugal and careful and watchful, and it's just interesting, because all 3 of us are on the Appropriations Committee, which is the committee that has to present the budget. So we're all mindful of those obligations and how we obligate future General Assemblies, if you will. And by the same token, if things change in Washington, they could just take one vote and change those rates up there. So these are all the things that are kind of the moving parts to that.
And of course, one of the matters pending in Washington relates to some of those subjects you just covered, sequestration. You talked about the number of federal employees, the number of federal contractors, and the number of military institutions throughout the state. The governor has a federal contingency fund, but it pales in comparison to the damage that would be done if sequestration occurs. I assume you're hearing about those issues quite a bit.
Woody, piggybacking a little bit on what Jimmy just said, I want everyone to know that the 2% increase in pay is not a mandate on localities, and because it's what we're doing is we're putting up our part of the 2% raise. It's up to the locality whether they want to do this or not, and because we're always being hit on or criticized for putting unfunded mandates out there, and this is not an unfunded mandate. The other thing I'd like to say about Henrico County, and because I represent 4 different jurisdictions, the city of Hopewell and parts of Hopewell, Prince George, and Chesterfield and Henrico. Henrico County and Chesterfield County, when it comes to judgeships and selecting judges, we always have like twice as many that are just far and above, I mean, just really very well qualified, where in some areas of the state we do not have that. And we're very fortunate that Henrico County has some excellent people. They have excellent people running the county, excellent judges, the entire works. And we're very fortunate to represent Henrico County.
I think, go ahead, Jimmy.
Can I just give you a business guy's
Absolutely.
input on the Medicaid, on the healthcare exchanges? On the healthcare exchanges, people say, well, we want the state. You know, we want to take the state-based route instead of the federal route. And, you know, I think all of us were originally sympathetic to that. But the fact of the matter is it's not going to be a state exchange. The federal government is going to dictate to us everything we got to do, down to the I, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So we're going to have no flexibility in it, and we would have to pay for it. So if it's going to be a state exchange in name only, it's really going to be a federal exchange. Let's let the federal government run it, and let's let the federal government pay for it. I think that's the way we're leaning towards. And then on the Medicaid expansion, you know, the biggest argument for Medicaid expansion, everybody says, you know, why are we taking the federal government's going to pay for all of it? Let's take free money. Well, there's no such thing as free money, Woody. I mean, you know, this is money that they're going to be borrowing, you know, that all of us are going to have to pay back someday. And so, you know, as a business person, you know, Woody, the federal government spends $425 million an hour.
An hour.
An hour. On a $275 million an hour revenue base. That's spending $10 billion a day on a $6 billion revenue base. I mean, we are on the path to being Greece. And so, you know, if I was sitting down in a business deal and I had somebody who's on the path to being Greece saying, don't worry about the cost because I'm going to pay 100% of it, who was in the financial shape that I just talked about, the federal government, had 100% of their, you know, GDP, debt to GDP, and they said, don't worry about it, Jimmy. You know, I'm going to guarantee I'm going to pay you the 100% for the next 3 years. You know, if I was in a business transaction doing that, I'd get laughed out of the room. So, you know, the federal government is just not going to be able to fulfill all these commitments over the next 5 or 10 years. And so, you know, for us to obligate the state of Virginia down that route with a financial partner that's headed in the direction of the federal government, I think would be just irresponsible.
Continue. Go ahead.
Well, all I was going to say was what scares me about the entire thing is who is going to pay, because the federal government, they cannot continue to spend $1 and borrow 40-some cents of every dollar. And we're borrowing from China, and, you know, unbelievable. We owe everything to China now. And we cannot continue to do that. What I'm afraid of, and there are a lot of us that feel the same way, that with the feds, they're going to have to raise revenue or cut spending or a combination thereof. What scares me is I think that they are not going to bite the bullet. They're going to give the states possibly a pot of money and say, this is your money. You spend it the way you see fit because you can control it better than we can. It's going to put the burden on the state, and we're going to have a big problem because that pot of money is going to be everything from Section 8 housing to welfare to everything, and health care, the whole works. And that's what scares me.
Go ahead, Doc.
You know what I think is an instructive lesson here? That things don't happen in a vacuum. You know, you've got federal government, you've got federal spending, you got the revenues that they collect and what they are spending. You got a state level. We have a state income tax, we have a sales tax, and we interact with the localities. Henrico is going to have to make a decision about their 2% for the teachers. But Henrico historically has kind of tried to treat everybody the same. If a teacher gets a raise, a county employee gets a raise. So it's going to put a little bit of an obligation and stress on the county. At the same time, when their revenue base is going down because the houses are costing, value of the houses is going down, that's the main base for their revenue. So things don't happen in a vacuum, and our challenge here is to try to be as fair as we can and keep. You know, we all have, unlike Washington, we all have obligations to balance our budgets every year. And that is, I think, a wonderful driver that forces us. State's running now at about, 2000, 2007, 2008 level. So we have, for the first time in a long time, actually had to reduce state government. And we're all doing fine.
Doug and Massie, one of the criticisms of the governor's transportation proposal, among others, is that it does rely on the federal government to pass a law that would allow a tax on internet retail sales. Is that a wise thing?
I met with the governor yesterday, matter of fact, and we had this discussion. The intelligence that he's receiving is that it's likely that the Congress is going to agree to that. I think as legislators, you know, to think that, you know, a Republican House is going to agree to impose, you know, an online sales tax seems a little far-fetched to me at the moment, but I am in contact with Congressman Cantor's office. I'm asking the question up there. It really, and what you got to remember, it's not really a new tax. I mean, you're supposed, when I go online or buy by telephone, I'm supposed to declare that and pay that tax on my, and it's really unfair to our bricks and mortar retailers. If I go buy this pair of shoes I've got on here in the state of Virginia, bricks and mortar retail, I got to pay 5% tax on. If I go online, buy them from the person, buy them from the manufacturer directly, I don't have to pay the sales tax to him. I'm supposed to pay it myself. Obviously, nobody's doing that. So what we're talking about is really more of a tax enforcement than a new tax. But I'm skeptical too that with the dysfunction in Washington D.C. that we're going to be able to get that, they're going to get that done. So I'm doing my due diligence on it.
What about the elimination of the 17.5 cent gas tax?
Well, the governor's kind of taken a forward-looking approach in the sense that the gas tax, while it's a good user tax and a nexus, has diminishing returns with the CAFE standards and all the other things that we're seeing. So it's a novel approach. I actually talked to the governor a little bit about a different path where you might just do a vehicle miles per year. The problem with that is that unless you get around having to write the check, it's just as bad as the car tax.
Right.
But, we all get our cars inspected once a year. You could certify your odometer and put that on your income tax return, state income tax return, and could be a part of that bigger package.
And what about the increased use of the sales tax?
Well, Woody, I'm in the process now. I sent out about 40-some letters at random to see what the people felt about the governor's plan. And the biggest thing that I'm hearing is from the elderly that do not drive that much, very little. Maybe, in fact, one called me on the telephone and he said, I drive up to Food Line and buy groceries and I go home. He said, and I may go up, twice a week. He said, I don't put that many miles in the car. He said, so therefore, the 17.5 cents, he said, it's not going to affect me that much. He said, but that 0.8 cents, or if they rounded it to 6 or whatever, that is going to hurt. That's going to cost me more. And so I understand that point. So I'm gathering information now, but that, of the entire plan, the biggest thing I've heard is the people do not like doing over the 17.5 cents gas tax. Really what they're concerned about is what is to prove in any way, shape, or form that 17.5 cents is going to come back to you and me. And I understand that, and that's my job. I'm here to represent the people and get their input and then go from there. But I want to commend the governor putting forward this transportation package. I do think that there will be some compromises, and when we do that, I think that we will end up with something coming out of here.
We're about out of time, but I want to make sure I thank you all for being here. Delegate Jimmy Massie, Delegate John O'Bannon, and Delegate Riley Ingram. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.